Hey everyone! Tonight we're going back to 1584, a Japan ravaged by endless war and too much sword sharpening. You're not going to survive this. You're about to be born as Miyamoto Musashi. And let's be honest, medieval Japan was anything but peaceful. What historians politely call a troubled time for the country. So before you get too cocky, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually like what I'm doing here. And leave a comment, where are you watching from, and what time is it? Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for a gentle hum, and let's get started tonight. Your first breath comes from a chilly village called Miyamoto, nestled in the misty mountains of Harima Province. No soothing lullabies await you, only the sharp clanging of men practicing swordplay outside the window. Well, technically, there is no window. It's more like a hole in the wall, letting in both smoke and wind. The air smells faintly of iron, wood smoke, and straw. You blink at the wooden beams of the thatched roof and perhaps wonder if you were born in a house or a barn. Spoiler both. Your first cradle wasn't silk. It was a rough blanket covering the cold ground. There were no silver spoons here, unless you count the bamboo ladle your mother used to scoop up her thin porridge. Historians still debate whether your name is Shinmen Benosuke or just the screams of village children telling you not to steal their snacks. Either way, Musashi comes later, a nickname that sticks harder than tree sap. Outside, the world is in chaos. Japan is deep in the Warring States period, the so-called Warring States period. Imagine 100 episodes of Game of Thrones happening at once, except instead of dragons, everyone is obsessed with swords. Lords betray each other over bowls of tea. Castles burn down for petty reasons like your fence is on my land, and peasants try not to get trampled while samurai take revenge. Your father, Shinmen Musashi, is part of this bloody game. Some say he was a respected samurai, others say he was good at beating people with sticks. He carried the title of Gokunin, meaning serving the local lord when he wasn't arguing with his neighbors or sharpening his sword. Legend has it that Musashi was so good that he received an official sword-fighting certificate from the shogunate. It was basically a medieval swordsmanship degree. But whether he was famous or infamous depends on who you ask. Some historians say he taught you swordplay from the moment you could stand. Others say he barely noticed you unless you were in his way. Your mother. That's another mystery. Some accounts say she died early, others say she was a servant, or a concubine, or perhaps just a quiet woman, fading into history like ink on an old scroll. Either way, you were raised mostly by the harshness of the times and your father's impatience. There was no kindergarten for you, no finger painting classes. Your first toys were wooden practice swords, and your first lessons were simple swing or be swung. You learned to balance by standing on rocks by the stream near your house. You learned to be patient by trying not to blink when mosquitoes landed on your face, and you learned this tactic the first time you stole a handful of leftover rice and hid it under your sleeve. At night, when other children fell asleep to lullabies, you fell asleep to the clanging of metal, your father practicing under the moonlight. Sometimes you dreamed of battles. Sometimes you dreamed of nothing at all, because your body was too tired from practicing swordplay all day. And the strange thing was, even as a child, you loved it. The bruises, the sweat, the cold mornings, it all felt like part of something bigger, a calling, or maybe just the early signs of workaholism. But hey, that was the 1500s. Psychotherapy wasn't really common yet. Historians are still debating how much of your childhood was fact and how much was myth. Did you really practice nonstop from the age of 5? Or is it just a samurai trick designed to make you sound like a Japanese version of Hercules? No one knows for sure. But one thing is clear, you're not like other kids. While they chase fireflies, you chase perfection. And tonight, under the pale moonlight, with the wind blowing through the pines, you grip your wooden sword a little tighter. Tomorrow, you'll practice again. And today, you wake before the rooster crows. Again, your body still aches from yesterday's training. But it doesn't matter. There are no days off when your father is Shinmen Musashi. You trudge out into the morning mist, wooden sword in hand. The grass is wet. Your bare feet are cold, but you don't care anymore. Today, like every other day, you will practice your cuts, your stances, your breathing. Your muscles remember the movements better than your mind. Your father waits, arms crossed. He doesn't smile. He rarely smiles. His lessons are sharp and to the point literally. You crouch low, as is tradition, but inwardly you are ready for the first strike. Again, he says, that's his favorite word. He hands you a bakken, a wooden sword polished by hours of sweat and dropped more times than you care to admit. You grip it, brace for bruises. There's no padding, no gloves. When he hits your wrist, it stings. When he taps your forehead, it resonates in your skull. And when he knocks you down, well, the ground sounds familiar now. Some scholars believe that Musashi taught you not just to fight, but to survive. But others say he was just a perfectionist with poor parenting skills. Historians are divided on whether he trained you out of love or stubbornness. Maybe both. At night, you don't dream of toys or candy. You dream of steps, of keeping your balance as the world spins. And sometimes you dream of revenge, not on anyone in particular, just on the universe for making life so hard. But then you wake up, pick up your sword, and keep going. By the time you're 8, your hands are calloused. Your grip is stronger than most grown men's. You've learned to listen to the wind, to predict the movement of the grass beneath your feet. And you've learned to dodge your father's blows most of the time. There are rumors in the village about you. Some say you're a devil child. Some say you've been blessed by the god of war. Others just think you're weird. The last group is probably right. You don't pay much attention to what they say. You're too busy trying to perfect the angle of your wrist when you swing your sword. Too focused on how your knees should bend, softly but firmly. Your father tells you, if you hesitate, you die. You believe him. This is Warring States Japan, after all. There was a warlord on every hilltop and a bandit in every forest. Death was as common as rice, even more so. Your education was unconventional. While other children studied calligraphy, you learned to spot a weak stance. While they memorized poetry, you learned to memorize how far a sword could travel before it cut deep enough to end a fight. And while they chanted about honor, you practiced falling and getting up without dropping your weapon. Some historians say all of this was part of Bushido, the samurai code of conduct. Others say Bushido wasn't even written down. Perhaps you lived by a code that didn't exist on paper, only in your scars. One strange thing you learned from your father was an obsession with swordplay. He taught you to bow, to say your name, to duel. He said it was honorable. But you also noticed him muttering about politics, about how samurai were hypocrites, smiling at each other while sharpening their knives behind their backs. This lesson stuck with you more than the sword exercises. You began to think, what if there was another way to win? What if you swung your sword not only faster but smarter? What if you broke the rhythm, disrupted the flow, caught your opponent off guard? The idea planted itself in your mind like a seed, and one day it would grow into something dangerous. Right now, you were still a child, but not for long. One day, your father brought home a guest, a traveling monk who smelled of pine needles and old sake. He watched you practice, his eyes narrowing. Then he said to your father, "This kid is wild, like a wolf cub." You heard this while pretending to sleep. Those words echoed in your head for weeks. A wolf cub? Maybe that's exactly who you are. At 13, most kids are trying to sneak extra rice into their dinner. You're preparing for your first legal kill. Rumors reach you one foggy morning a traveling samurai named Arima Kihei has arrived in town. He's a member of the Shinto Ryu school, which is basically a brand of medieval martial arts. He's showing off at the local shrine, inviting anyone to duel him. You hear whispers. You see villagers peeking from behind bamboo blinds, wondering who would be foolish enough to try. Spoiler alert, it's you. Your father isn't home when you make your decision. Maybe that's for the best. You don't want him to stop you or worse, try to fight for you. You grab a wooden stick because it's all you have. You don't even have a proper sword, just a chunk of oak, heavier than it looked, awkwardly placed in your large hands. The villagers gathered. Some bet small coins. Most bet you would lose. After all, Arima Kihei was a grown man, well-trained and experienced. You were just a barefoot child with messy hair. Historians still debate the event. Did you actually kill him? Some scrolls say yes. Others say you knocked him down, and he died of shame or illness. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. But on this day, none of that matters. To you, there is only the present moment. You step into the clearing, your heart pounding but your hands steady. The air smells faintly of dust and pine. Your opponent straightens, grinning as if this will be easy. He bows politely. You bow back, perhaps not deeply enough. You're still learning the etiquette. Then it begins. Kaihei swings first, expecting you to duck like a frightened child, but you don't. You step into his range, closing the distance before he can adjust. It's chaotic, it's bold, and it's completely unexpected. You slam into him like a small landslide of adolescent rage and instinct. Your staff comes crashing down on his head. The sound echoes a sharp crack that silences the birds. Kihei falls. The crowd gasps. Some laugh awkwardly, others look away. No one moves for a long moment. Finally, someone steps forward to check his pulse. The answer comes in whispers. He can't get up. Congratulations! You've won your first match, and probably your first therapy session, too, except, well, it's 1597, so therapy isn't really that common yet. Afterward, you sit alone by the river, staring at the water, wondering what you've done. Part of you feels powerful. Part of you feels strange, like something irreversible has just happened. Word spread quickly. By evening, the whole town knows. Some call you a prodigy. Others say you're a devil in disguise. Your father is silent for a long time. When he finally speaks, it's just this, "Be faster next time." That's it. No hugs, no congratulations, just another lesson. The very next day, you're back at practice. Same routine, same sweat, but now with a different weight on your chest. You've crossed the line. Life and death are no longer just ideas, they're things you hold in your hands. At 13, you've officially become a warrior. At 13, you've done something most men will never have to face in their lifetimes. And at 13, you realize something most warriors will never admit. Victory is complicated. Some historians debate whether this moment made you bloodthirsty or cautious. Did it ignite the flames of violence, or did it teach you how fragile victory really is? The truth, as usual, is probably both. You become sharper, more focused, but also quieter. You start to observe people more closely, the way they stand, the way they breathe, the way they blink just before they move. You're not just training your arms anymore. You're training your mind. And somewhere deep inside, the wolf cub grew sharper teeth. At 15, you do what most adults wouldn't dare do. You leave home. No fanfare, no tears. You pack up what little you have, a sword, a traveling cloak that smells like rain, and the kind of attitude that turns polite villagers into nervous squinters. You don't even wait for permission. Why would you? By this time, you've realized that the world won't teach you lessons in a neat classroom. You have to pursue them. Some historians say you left because of a fight with your father. Others say it was because your small village was too small for your growing ambitions. Whatever the case, one thing is clear: you don't want to be bound by a single school, a single master, or a single set of rules. You choose the life of a ronin, a samurai without a master. In theory, this makes you free. In practice, it makes you homeless. You sleep under trees. You eat cold rice when you're lucky, wild roots when you're unlucky. Sometimes you catch fish, sometimes you steal them. Once, you try to roast a frog. It doesn't go well. You travel from prefecture to prefecture, down dusty road to dusty road, sword in hand. The Japanese countryside is still not picturesque. It's rough, unpredictable, and sometimes smells of horse sweat mixed with river mud. You get used to the sound of insects chirping at night and your feet aching from walking all day. People whisper as you pass. Some recognize you. Others just sense something strange about you, the way you're always on point, the way you carry your sword as if it were an extension of your body rather than an accessory. You challenge dojos wherever you find them. Some are small village schools. Others belong to prestigious clans with polished wooden floors and embroidered banners. It doesn't matter to you. You walk in, say your name, and wait for someone to accept you. Sometimes you win easily. Sometimes you mess up. But you always learn something. That's your real goal. You don't collect trophies. You collect techniques, habits, mistakes. You observe how each school moves. You note their strengths, their weaknesses, and the flaws they don't even know they have. Some scholars say this is how you begin to develop your own style, by learning from the best of others. Others say you improvise, doing whatever feels right at the moment. Either way, your reputation grows. And reputation comes with risk. You meet samurai who challenge you just to see if the rumors are true. Some bow politely, others try to kill you outright. Once, a man threw a rock at you before the duel began. You dodged it, obviously, but you remember the trick. You learn to stay one step ahead, to anticipate not just the blade but the intention behind it. You learn to disrupt the rhythm, to disrupt your opponent's expectations. Sometimes you pretend to stumble just to see their reaction. Sometimes you smile when you shouldn't, and that distracts them long enough for you to win. Historians debate whether you always fought with a real sword. Some say you sometimes used a wooden one, especially when teaching someone a lesson without killing them. Others claim you never hesitated to draw a steel one. You don't correct rumors. You let them spread. A little mystery is good for survival. Now your clothes are torn at the edges, your sandals are worn, and your hair looks like you fought a small bird and got lost. But you don't care. The wilderness is your training ground. Rivers teach you to flow. Mountains teach you patience. Wind teaches you timing. Sometimes you sleep under bridges. Sometimes in abandoned temples. Sometimes you wake up with a stray dog curled up at your feet, sharing the warmth because neither of you has anything better. You are learning the art of living with less comfort, less certainty, less rules. And in that empty space, you begin to feel something new. Freedom. But freedom comes at a price. You are separated from the security of a clan. No lord to protect you, no school to take you in, no salary, no home, no means. Just you, your sword, and the road. It's a risk, but you're always more interested in risk than comfort. And as you move away from childhood and venture deeper into the unknown, you realize one thing. The world isn't just a place to conquer. It's a place to explore. By 17, you've lost track of how many battles you fought. Now they're a blur, the faces, the blades, the bruises. Some opponents you remember clearly, the man with shaking hands who dropped his sword before the first blow, the master who tried to blind you with dirt from the floor, the drunken samurai who challenged you because he hated the sound of your footsteps. Others fade into the background, like smoke after a fire. People start calling you invincible. They whisper it in tea houses, mumble it in the marketplaces, pass it around like ghost stories around campfires. The barefoot Ronin who never lost, the wild boy with 2 swords. Some say you made a deal with the spirits, others think you were just lucky. Luck had nothing to do with it. You won because you fought differently. Most gladiators followed the same patterned formal stances, practiced movements, strict rituals. They bowed, they waited, they entered like actors on stage. You didn't play games, you attacked before they were ready. You changed angles mid-stroke. You stepped left when tradition told you to step right. Sometimes you used a real sword. Sometimes you used a wooden stick. Once, famously, you knocked a swordsman unconscious with a random oar because it was the closest thing. People still tell that story today, often with added details like he didn't spill a drop of sake or he sharpened the oar with his mind. The last one was obviously untrue, but you let them have their fun. Some historians say you picked your fights carefully, choosing opponents you knew you could beat. Others think you're reckless, taking on any challenge just to satisfy your obsession with mastery. Maybe both are true, maybe neither. What you do know is this: every duel teaches you something, not just about swordplay, but about people. You begin to see their weaknesses before they even realize it, the hesitation in their eyes, the twitch in their shoulders before they strike, the way their pride makes them predictable. You notice fear changing the way they hold their swords so tightly, as if that will somehow save them. Fencing isn't just about killing. It's about reading minds. And somewhere along the way, you realize you're no longer fighting to survive. You're fighting because that's how you understand the world. Sometimes you lose track of time. You wander into towns not knowing how long it's been since you last spoke to someone. When you talk, it's usually to ask one of 3 questions. Is there a dojo here? Who's the best swordsman in town? When can I duel him? It's not exactly a great way to make friends, but it's the path you've chosen. You develop strange habits. You eat little, often skipping meals to sharpen your senses. You sleep well, always ready to defend yourself even in your dreams. Sometimes you talk to birds, not because you think they'll answer, but because they understand something humans often forget: timing is everything. One night, you sit by the river, carving a pattern into a driftwood log with your knife. The moon reflects on the water. You think about all the duels you've won, and for the first time, you wonder what it would be like to lose. Will it be quick? Will it hurt? Did you know it was happening? The thought lingers in your mind, silent as a shadow by a campfire. Then you push it away. You're too far gone to doubt it now. The next day, you challenge another dojo. This time, the fight is different. They're not sending one student, they're sending 5. Maybe they think they can outmaneuver you. Maybe they're just tired of hearing your name whispered in the streets like a ghost story. You accept the challenge anyway. You adjust your stance, holding your sword loosely, letting your body decide before your brain can think too much. When they attack, you don't panic. You move like water. 2 more steps, a block, a turn, a quick strike to the ribs, not fatal, just enough to end the fight without losing your life. Another opponent stumbles as he tries to avoid you. You let him fall. There is no need to finish him off. He is already lost in his dream. In a matter of seconds, it is all over. You stand alone, breathing evenly, both swords still in your hands. This time there is no blood on the ground. The master bows to you. You bow back, but only slightly, just enough to acknowledge the effort, not enough to start a conversation. That night, as you leave the village, you realize something. This is no longer just a duel. It is about transforming yourself into something unpredictable. A force of nature, not of man. And tomorrow, you will continue walking. Because there is always another opponent. There is always another lesson. You're standing in the middle of the woods, holding 2 swords, one in each hand. At first, it feels wrong, like trying to write with both hands at the same time. Your right hand knows what it's doing. Your left feels like it's just there for decoration, but you keep practicing. Because something inside you tells you this is the next step. Most sword schools teach you to use one sword. It's tradition. It's the rules. But you've spent years watching those rules get people killed, so you decide to break them. You swing the long sword in your right hand, a katana, through the air in front of you. Your left hand continues to swing the wakizashi, the shorter blade often used for support or ritual suicide. You don't care about the rules. You care about survival. At first, you stumble often. You get caught in your own arms. One time, you accidentally hit yourself in the shin with your short sword. It hurts. You pretend it never happened. But as the days go by, your movements begin to change. Your body stops thinking about 2 swords and starts thinking about a rhythm, a flow. The blades move like extensions of your heartbeat. Some historians say you invented this 2-sword style, called Niten Ichi Ryu, right here in the woods. Others say you just made it famous. Maybe you borrowed bits and pieces from other warriors, putting together your own version. Historians love to argue about firsts. You don't care about firsts, you only care about what works. When you swing both swords at the same time, you notice something strange happening. Your opponent doesn't know how to react. They've been trained for single-handed sword play. They've memorized the patterns, the counters, the strategies. But when you attack with both hands, their brains short-circuit. Do they block high or low, left or right? By the time they decide, you've already cut through them. You're no longer fighting like a man. You're fighting like a storm. And storms don't follow protocol. At night, you sit by the fire, testing ideas in your head. What if you move closer instead of backing away? What if you swing your sword while your opponent is still drawing his? What if you fight without thinking, letting your instincts take over? Other warriors sleep, you experiment. Some nights you dream of sword shapes, some nights you dream of nothing. Just a stillness like the space between 2 breaths. It is in this void that you now begin to live. The people you meet do not know what to think of you. They expect a gentlemanly samurai, a man who bows, recites poetry, wears silk under his armor. Instead, they meet you barefoot, dusty, hair that looks like it has been struck by lightning, clothes tied with a strong will and perhaps too many knots. At first they laugh, then you draw both swords. The laughter stops. You test your new style in real battles. Some are hand-to-hand combat, some are chaotic skirmishes in back alleys or mountain passes. You do not fight, but you do not give up either. Once, you fight 3 men at once with 2 swords. Another time, you defeat a group of bandits by switching hands mid-swing, confusing them so much that they stumble. People begin to call you unpredictable. Some call you reckless. Some call you a genius. You don't. You just keep going. You're carving your way into the world of martial arts, not with calligraphy, but with aerial slashes. You're creating a style that no one knows how to counter. That's the point. Historians are still debating whether Niten Ichi Ryu was truly revolutionary. Some say it was purely practical, using both hands, doubling your options. Others say it was philosophical, a metaphor for balance, right and left, long and short, offense and defense in perfect harmony. Maybe both are right. Maybe both are wrong. You just know it works. One day, while you're sword fighting with a tree stump because, let's be honest, no one else volunteers, you realize something. This isn't about swords anymore. It's about how you see the world. Most people choose one path, one school of thought, one idea. You decide to hold two at the same time. And just like that, you change the rules of the game again. You arrive in Kyoto with a dusty coat and no intention of making friends. Kyoto is no ordinary city, it's the cultural heart of Japan, where tea ceremonies are sacred, poetry is currency, and sword schools guard their reputations like jealous gods. It's also full of elite warriors who believe they're invulnerable. Naturally, you decide to challenge them. Specifically, you challenge the Yoshioka clan, the most prestigious sword school in Kyoto at the time. Think of them as the Ivy League of swordsmanship, except instead of student loans, you get bruises. The Yoshioka clan has built its legacy over decades. They train the best warriors, serve noble lords, and teach techniques so exquisite they almost sparkle. Their students strut down the streets with looks of confidence that say, "My dad could fight your dad and win." You walk into their dojo looking like you just came out of the river. They stare at you. You stare back. You draw your sword. Then you do the unthinkable, you demand a duel. Some historians say you do it out of arrogance. Others say you genuinely want to test yourself against the best. There's even a theory that you simply got lost, stumbled into the dojo and thought, well, since I'm here. Either way, the challenge is accepted. Your first duel is with Yoshioka Sejuro, the headmaster of the dojo. He's polite, urbane, and believes you're just a cocky ronin looking for attention. He's wrong. When the duel begins, you don't play by his rules. You don't wait for a perfect stance or an elegant opening. You attack with speed, unpredictability, and just the right amount of controlled chaos. Seijuro never stands a chance. You break his arm with a single well-timed strike. The crowd gasps. His students jump in alarm, suddenly realizing that the wild-looking man before them isn't here to lose. You leave the dojo quietly, without gloating, without a word. You're already thinking about the next match. The Yoshioka clan doesn't take this lightly. A few weeks later, Seijuro's older brother, Denshichiro, challenges you to another match, this time to the death. He's younger, stronger, and more ferocious, which, as you know, usually means he's easier to beat. When that day comes, you're calm. He's not. The match is over quickly, too quickly. In fact, with one solid strike, Denshichiro falls to the ground, his sword clanged, his family was humiliated again. At this point, you could have walked away. Most people would have, but the Yoshioka clan would not have let up. They planned one last battle, and this time, they did not intend to fight fairly. They sent a child. Mada Shichiro, the next heir, who was only 13 years old. It was no longer about swordplay. It was about honor, revenge, and traps. You knew it was a trap. Everyone knew it was a trap. They had dozens of armed soldiers stationed nearby, ready to ambush you as soon as you entered the arena. So you did what you always did, changed your tactics. Instead of arriving on time, you showed up early, before the ambush was ready, before the soldiers were in position, before anyone could blink. You quickly cut down Matashichiro, not because you wanted to, but because if you didn't, you'd be hacked to death by dozens of swords. Chaos broke out. Yoshioka fighters rushed out of the shadows, screaming, swords drawn, but you moved, weaving through them like wind through tall grass. You slashed what needed to be slashed, dodged what you could, and disappeared into the mist before anyone could figure out how you'd done it. Some historians say this was the end of the Yoshioka sect. Others say they were in decline, and he had just spurred them on. Either way, his name became a legend in Kyoto overnight. People began calling him a demon, a ghost, a storm wrapped in human skin. And he just kept walking. Onward. He didn't stay to collect trophies or students. He didn't build a dojo or sit on a mat and recruit disciples. He left Kyoto the same way he had arrived, quietly, dust on his robes, eyes on the horizon, because he had not come here to seek glory. He had come here to test the limits of what was possible. And in Kyoto, he had just proven that those limits were farther than anyone had thought. His fame spread like a dark cloud across Japan. Now, every swordsman knew his name. Some respected him, some feared him, a few dreamed of being the one to finally strike him down. And then there was Sasaki Kojiro. Rumors of Kojiro reached you through whispers, tavern gossip, and wandering monks who seemed too excited to share bad news. They called him the Devil of the West. They said his blade was so fast it could slice a bird from the ski. His signature move, Swallow Slash, was modeled after the flapping wings of a sparrow, fast, precise, deadly. Historians still debate whether he actually used the technique or if it was just a cool-sounding name. Either way, it lives on. Kojiro is everything you don't have. He was tall, graceful, always immaculately dressed, his hair was oiled, his robes were clean. His sword was unusually long, a monohoshizao, drying pole. It was almost like a fishing rod with a blade. Some said he carried it to compensate for something. You didn't say it, but you paid attention, because finally, here was an opponent who could truly challenge you. He was not a martial artist intoxicated by his own legend. He was not a reckless student seeking street fame. Kojiro was skilled, focused, and most importantly, unbeatable. Two unstoppable forces. A clash was inevitable. It was not a matter of if, but when. The challenge came quietly, through messengers too polite for the occasion. A duel had been arranged. No army, no politics, just two swordsmen on a small island called Ganryujima, a strip of sand and rock in the Kanmon Strait. Neutral ground, far enough away that no one can interfere, close enough that rumors will echo for centuries. The day is set. You don't prepare the way other warriors would. You don't sharpen your sword or compose your death poem. You obviously don't get a haircut. You don't even sleep well the night before, not out of fear, but because your mind is constantly running through battle scenarios. You think about the timing, the angle, Kojiro's reach. His sword is so long it could almost spear a fish from a boat. Getting close would be difficult, but if you back off, you'll dance to his rhythm and you've spent your whole life breaking the rhythm. So you change the rules again. On the day of the duel, you carve a bakken, a wooden sword, from an oar on the boat trip to the island. It's almost as long as Kojiro's ridiculous blade, but lighter, faster, more unpredictable. Plus, it sends a message you're so confident you didn't even bring steel. Some historians say it was strategic, others say it was an insult. Either way, it works. When you arrive at Ganryujima, you're deliberately late. Kojiro is already there, pacing. His robes flutter in the sea breeze. His face turns solemn when he sees you. His students and retainers whisper behind their sleeves. They think you're disrespectful. You think they're predictable. The duel begins before the first blow. Kojiro draws his massive sword in one elegant motion, executing a swallow cut that cuts through the air like silk. But you don't give him time to finish. You lunge forward, wielding the wooden sword you forged an hour ago. It whistles through the air, not because it's sharp, but because you are. You land a clean blow on his head. It's over before the waves hit the shore. Kojiro falls to the sand, eyes wide, mouth slightly open as if still trying to finish the thought. The swallow, cut, never touches the ground. The massive sword lies motionless beside him. The crowd is silent. Even the seagulls seem confused. Some say Kojiro died instantly. Others believe he lingered for a few more breaths, whispering curses into the wind. Either way, the duel is over. And you don't gloat. You don't bow. You don't even stay to see the aftermath. You step back into the boat, carved wooden sword still in hand, and sail away. This story will be told for centuries. Some will say you tricked Kojiro, that arriving late broke his concentration. Others will argue that you simply outclassed him. Some will say you were cruel, turning a legendary duel into an execution. You don't answer any of them. Because the truth is simpler, you don't fight Kojiro's battle. You fight for yourself. And once again, you walk away. You left Ganryujima with the sea breeze blowing your cloak and a strange weight on your chest. Not exactly guilt, but it was heavier than any victory you had ever known. Defeating Kojiro was not like overthrowing the Yoshioka clan or taking down arrogant swordsmen in back-alley dojos. This time was different. Kojiro was more than just an opponent. He was your mirror, the only swordsman left in all of Japan who could truly understand what it meant to stand on the edge of mastery. And now he was gone. You thought about that as the boat rocked beneath you, the island shrinking behind you like fading ink on a scroll. The wooden sword you had carved from the oar rested on your lap. It was not bloody. It didn't need to be. The silence of the return journey was heavier than steel. Historians still argue about what you felt that day. Some say you secretly celebrated. Others believe you mourned. Others think you felt nothing at all. But one thing is certain after Ganryujima. Something inside you changed. You no longer had the desire to fight as before. Not because there was no one else to fight, there was always another swordsman eager to be the one to finally defeat Musashi. But now, when they bowed and challenged you, you felt tired. Not physically, your body was still sharp, your reflexes still ruthless, but your spirit heavier, as if carrying an unseen burden. After all, what was the point of drawing your sword when you had already defeated the strongest? You began to refuse duels. Not always, but more often than before. Sometimes you win without moving at all. A glance, a half step forward, a slight tilt of the head. That's enough. Fear ends the fight before the blade leaves its sheath. You realize something new. The highest level of fighting isn't about cutting people down. The point is to end the fight before it starts. At night, you sit by the river, letting your thoughts wander like fallen leaves. You watch the moon ripple across the water, and for the first time, you wonder what it feels like to lose. Will it be quick? Will it be painful? Will you even notice when it happens? The thought lingers in your mind like a shadow behind a fire, but you push it away. You're too far gone now to doubt it. People continue to tell stories about you in the villages you pass through. Children chase each other with sticks, shouting your name. Drunken samurai tell tales in smoky taverns, adding ridiculous details. Musashi fought 10 men at once, they say. He carved his sword from a tree at breakfast and finished the duel before lunch. You don't correct them. Let the legends live on. They're easier to hear than the truth, anyway. But when you catch sight of your reflection in a still pool of water, you know the truth. The real enemy isn't the swordsman standing before you. It's the emptiness that comes when you've won too many times. So you start looking for something else. Not more fights, not more broken ribs or blood on the ground. You're looking for something beyond victory, beyond fighting. At first, you don't know what it is, but you start by picking up a brush instead of a blade. You paint. It's awkward. Your brushstrokes are like a crane stumbling over an inkwell. Your mountains are tilted. But slowly, patiently, you improve. You realize that the brush is just another sword, soft when it needs to be, sharp when it needs to be. You carve wood. You make bamboo flutes. You study tea ceremony. You sit quietly for hours, doing nothing but breathing. Some say you've grown soft. You understand better. This is the hardest fight of all, the fight with yourself. Historians will debate for centuries why you renounced violence. Some say it was out of guilt. Others believe it was enlightenment. A few will say you feared death and wanted to leave a legacy through art. But there is another idea. Maybe you simply conquered the world and then turned inward, fighting your ego. You don't give an explanation. You never did. You just know one thing: the path of the sword is narrow, but life is wide. And now, finally, you are ready to go further. You retreat deeper into the mountains, away from the noise of the city and the rustle of samurai robes in the palace. You are not running away. You are stepping aside, off the beaten path of warriors who have spent their lives chasing titles, fame, and shiny armor. You have tasted all of that, and it makes you crave something else. So you climb higher. You find caves where the air is cold and still, where even the wind seems hesitant before entering. You sit there for hours, days, sometimes weeks, just listening to your own breathing. Some people call this meditation. You just call it mindfulness. You begin to understand things you never noticed when your life was all about duels, like how water wears away stone, not by force, but by patience. The way a leaf falls from a tree can teach you more about time than 100 sword masters. You spend less time polishing weapons and more time carving wood carvings. You paint landscapes where mountains are shrouded in mist. You write poetry, sometimes bad poetry, but you write anyway. And you think a lot. You think about the men you fought, the lives you took, the students you rejected. You think about Kojiro, about the duel on Ganryujima, about the moment your sword pierced his skull. Some nights you dream about it. Some nights you dream about silence. Historians debate whether you regret the life you lived. Some believe you were haunted by the ghost of your opponent. Others say you were completely at peace, but you never left a diary to explain it. All you have left is your training. During these quiet years, you begin to write down what you have learned, not just about swordsmanship, but about life. You write the Book of 5 Rings. It is not a book of flashy techniques. It is not a list of fancy sword moves or dramatic battle stories. It is a manual for the mind, a guide to strategy, combat, awareness, and insight. Each ring represents an element: earth, water, fire, wind, and void. The Earth Book teaches foundations: how to stand firm, how to balance, how to hold your ground when the world shifts beneath your feet. The Water Book teaches flexibility: how to adapt, how to flow, how to move without resistance. The Fire Book teaches timing: how to strike quickly, when to unleash your aggression, when to hold back. The Wind teaches awareness: how to understand not only yourself but also your opponent, how to observe without judgment. And then there is the Void, the most mysterious of all. The Void is about nothingness, the space between thoughts, between actions, between life and death. That is where true mastery resides. Some scholars still debate the meaning of the void. Is it a Zen philosophy, or is it just a poetic way of saying be calm? No one knows for sure. That is the question. You write without any desire for fame, no ambition for your students. You do not want to start a school or build a monument to your ego. You are simply trying to record the lessons you have spent your whole life learning. Sometimes your hand shakes when you write, not because of age, but because of intensity. Every word is a duel, not with an opponent, but with the limits of language itself. You know, most people will misunderstand your work. They will skim the surface, looking for quick wins, swordplay tricks to impress their friends. But that's okay. The few who read carefully will find what they need. And you don't care about the rest. Because mastery is never for the masses. It's for the few who are willing to go it alone. Now, your body is slowing down. You're no longer the skinny, the wild teenager who picked fights with every dojo he came across. Your joints ache. Your muscles don't heal as quickly as they used to. But what about your mind? Your mind is sharper than ever. You realize something that no one teaches in sword schools. The real goal of fighting is not winning. It's about understanding. Understand your enemy. Yes, but more importantly, understand yourself. Most warriors spend their lives trying to control the world. You've learned to control the space inside your mind. And in the silence of the mountains, with your inked fingers and calloused hands, you finally see the truth. You were never really a swordsman. You were just a student of life. Seasons pass. The mountains turn from green to gold to white, then back again. You are in your cave, high above the valleys where lords and generals play their endless games. Down below, men still fight for land, titles, and temporary glory. Up here, you fight for something else entirely. Some call you a hermit now. Some call you a sage. You call yourself nothing. You are just a man living in a cold cave, writing on paper, carving wood, and letting the world be without your intervention. Occasionally, someone climbs the mountain to find you, a young warrior, eager to learn, an old general, thirsty for advice, a wandering monk, curious about your solitude. Sometimes you answer their questions, sometimes you don't. Depends on the question. One day, a young samurai kneels at the entrance to a cave and asks you for the secret of invincibility. You look at him, smile weakly, and say, "Don't fight." He walks away, confused, perhaps thinking you've lost your mind. But you haven't. You've learned that the true master isn't the one who wins every duel. It's the one who no longer needs to draw his sword. You think of yourself as a young man, a wild boy barefoot in muddy fields, swinging sticks at trees, fighting in the dojo just to feel alive. You remember the bruises, the blood, the rush of adrenaline, the way your heart used to pound before a duel. You're not that boy anymore. Some historians wonder if you miss him. Do you remember the roar of battle, the clang of wood against steel, The roar of the crowd, maybe sometimes in rare moments you do, but mostly you are grateful for having gone through it all. Now, when you close your eyes, you don't see the enemy. You only see silence. Sometimes you meditate under a waterfall. Sometimes you sit in the dark, listening to your own heartbeat. You breathe, you watch the wind in the trees, and you write down your thoughts that flicker like lantern light. Now, you understand that death is not an enemy to be defeated. It is a companion, a teacher. It has been with you all your life, and soon it will hold your hand. You are not afraid of it. Why should you be afraid of it? Everything you have built was never meant to last. Not the victories, not the scars, not even the legends. What lasts is the discipline, the practice, moments when you are fully alive, fully present, fully aware of every breath, every cut, every brushstroke. You have realized the connection between all things: the sword, the brush, the wind, the space between two heartbeats. It is all the same lesson: presence. You used to think that mastery was about defeating others. Now you know it is about defeating the parts of yourself that resist the present moment. There are still people who want to fight you. There always will be. Some out of pride, some out of desperation, some because they want to say they faced the great Miyamoto Musashi, even if they lose. You rarely accept these challenges anymore, not because you are afraid, but because you have learned that some battles are simply not worth it. Most warriors die chasing the next victory, the next title, the next opponent. You don't want that. You would rather die quietly, consciously, and you know it will come soon. Your hands are slower now. Your legs ache in the morning. The cold bites your bones. You no longer sleep with one eye open, ready for ambushes that never come. Instead, you wake up each day grateful for the air in your lungs, grateful for the ink drying on the paper, grateful that after all you are still here and still learning. In the end, that is all you ever wanted. No fame, no money, not even to be remembered. Just to understand what it means to live in the moment, with or without money, with no fear to overcome. And as the final winter approaches, you smile softly to yourself, because you have won. Winter comes quietly, curling around you like an old companion, not like an enemy, but like a final chapter gently closing. And in your cave at Rigondo, far from the noise of lords, battles, and ambitions, you prepare for the moment when all swordsmen must finally meet. But unlike most, you welcome it not with fear, not with regret, but with the calm of one who has lived fully, missing nothing. You sit in silence, breathing evenly, your body wrapped in the simple robe of a man who has long since passed out of the world of titles, victories, and applause, and beside you lie your two swords, not weapons now, but companions, resting quietly in the last moment like old friends who have accompanied you from the wild youth of muddy fields and reckless duels to the quiet reflections of old age. Your students gather outside the cave, standing solemnly in silence, knowing that this is not a time for sadness or mourning, but rather to witness the end of a life that has never really been about defeating an opponent, but about cutting through illusions, facing the endless duel with yourself, mastering the mind that wants to grasp and control, and proving that letting go is the highest power. You gently place one hand on your katana, one on your wakizashi, not because you expect to fight again, but because these blades have accompanied you through every chapter of your life, and now they will witness the final chapter. A chapter written not in blood but in breath, in presence, in the quiet dignity of completion. You close your eyes, not to hide, but to open yourself fully to the truth you've always known deep down, that the greatest duel was never about defeating other men, but about facing your own fears, your own ego, your own resistance to change. And now that resistance is gone. You remember the boy you were, the barefoot kid with the wild eyes, swinging his stick into the darkness, chasing power without knowing that power lies not in muscle or speed, but in stillness, in patience, in awareness. You remember Kojiro, standing tall on Ganryujima, his longsword glinting in the sun, the final swing of your carved wooden paddle, the sound of his fall, the weight of victory that felt less like victory and more like silence. And now, after years of wandering, teaching, carving, painting, and writing, after seeing the world not as a battlefield but as a canvas of lessons, you understand that death is not a failure to be avoided. but part of the same stream that you have followed all your life, a river that carries you forward, first through youth, then through mastery, and now through death. You take a last breath, feeling the cold mountain air fill your lungs, fresh and invigorating, and then you exhale gently, not forcing it, not holding on, but letting it flow naturally, just as you let go of all attachments, all fears, all ambitions, knowing that your legacy is recorded not only in your book of 5 rings, but in every life you have lived, every duel you have fought, every moment you have chosen to live in the present rather than run away. Some will remember you as the unbeatable swordsman, the wild Ronin who refused to serve a master, the man who single-handedly took on an entire school and left them shattered. But others, the careful ones, will see that the real lesson you leave behind is not about winning battles, but about overcoming them. About finding peace in the midst of conflict, about transforming the path of swordplay into a path of life. Historians will debate for centuries who you were, whether you were a brute or a monk without robes, whether you were a murderer or a philosopher, but you have never cared about those labels because the truth of your life cannot be contained in labels. Instead, it exists in the quiet moments of practice, in the discipline of breathing, in the act of facing yourself over and over again until there is nothing left but presence. And so, without fear, without resistance, with nothing unfinished, you let your breath fade, your body becomes still, your mind completely at rest, leaving the world not as a man defeated by death, but as a man who has mastered it by welcoming it, walking through it with the same grace with which you once entered duels. Long after your body has become part of the earth, your story will continue. Discover the truth about what it means to be human. The final lesson is simple and absolute. The greatest battle is within. The real enemy is the restless mind. And the highest victory is peace. Now, as you lie down, relax your shoulders. Let your weight melt into the bed beneath you and feel the silence of the mountain air all around you, soft and cool, washing away the last of your tension. Tonight there is no sword, no armor, no enemies lurking in the dark, just slow, steady, gentle breathing, moving like the tide, rising and falling, ever softer. Imagine yourself sitting quietly, like Musashi, high above the world, your back against the cool rock, the wind whispering in your ears, the solid ground below, the vast sky above, and know that there is nothing to mend, nothing to pursue, nothing left unfinished. You have walked the path, that you have learned the lesson, you have let go of your fears. Let your face relax, let your arms hang loosely at your sides, let your chest rise and fall freely. No need to think of tomorrow, no need to carry the worries of today. They have faded into the distance, like footprints washed away by the rain. The night is quiet, the path is done. You are safe, you are still. Let go completely, fall into rest, with the same peace that Musashi found in his last breath. Sleep deeply, warrior. Sleep without fear, but sleep well.